Yeah, thank you, Ron. Thank you, everybody, for coming. Yeah, what we're going to talk about today is we talked about these like great initiatives from like more of a holistic perspective. What are cities doing? What are like these global goals that we're trying to hit? And so we're going to focus today on like, okay, how do we do it from a localized environment? What does that project, what does that whole aspect of that project look like? Plan checks. How do we make let's say we have a building that we have, and all of a sudden we have these sustainability goals from the C-class suites. What does it look like to go, okay, we want to become sustainable. We want to utilize a solar and battery project. And how can we make that project actually happen from basically taking the plans and implement the construction process to bring that project and have that customer transition their energy sources to clean green energy, essentially. And that's where, like, right now we're at a unique time, as we mentioned. It's a time where the technology is actually transferring, intersecting with the energy market. So now from like we're seeing developments of large scale microgrids where, so essentially what's happening is we're having these different energy production assets that are out there: wind, solar, battery technologies. So now what tells these assets what to do? So now we're seeing technology implement with these different assets to go, okay, solar is cheaper than battery storage. Let's use that solar power. And so it's a really critical time and fun time because, of course, what we want to see is we're starting to see that almost investing into energy resources is a lot more lucrative and financially sound than investing into the stock market. But we talked about the education process. And so it's actually being able to transmit clearly to top executives and to the private sector to say, hey, in order for us to have mass adoption, you're able to get substantial returns on your investments. And we get all this different money that's being created from the more of the, of course, the federal government is doing that, and from cities and utilities, but it's also big responsibilities in the private sector to actually help more mass deployment. And so the grants and the rebates and some federal funding out there helps transition these projects and to make them very lucrative financial investments. And so I'm going to get more into what does a project actually look like from more of a localized level. Like, also, I have a university campus. How can I transmit my university power sources to be utilized by clean green energy? Sometimes we can get lost in the translation when it comes to just city goals. But city goals basically can help power street lighting, city libraries. But what about our neighborhoods? What about our business campuses where the majority of the energy consumption is coming from? And so I'm going to talk about that a little bit in my presentation, but I'll introduce Brian Stevens from Solaredge. He focuses more on actually, so we have solar power, but when we have solar power, we can't use it, right? we have to transmit it to usable power. So allow you to.
Okay, sure. No, I appreciate that. So yeah, I'll kind of move through this. So my name is Brian Stevens. I'm with Solaredge. I've been in the industry for about 14 years on different aspects of it, both in front and behind the meter. And to his point, Solaredge is a kind of a small cog in the overall solar, engine, right? And I like to use analogies a lot. So one I like to use for this is a car, right? And tires. So inverters are to solar systems that tires are to a car. They're a very small percentage of the cost, but they have significant impact on performance and especially safety. And those are kind of the two primary topics I'm going to be talking about today with Solaredge: performance and safety, and how important they are in the industry as a whole. So real quick, who is Solaredge? From a global standpoint, we are a manufacturer of inverters, right? And we're actually the #1 manufacturer of inverters in the world today. Some of the things I want to just highlight real quick is just overall size of the systems we have out in the world: 31.6 megawatts. Oh, and by the way, this is about a month old, so it's completely wrong. It's just to give you an idea. All this has probably gone up exponentially. But right now, as of when this was produced, 31.6 gigawatts out in the world. We earned about $655 million just in Q1 of 2022 alone. The US alone did $1 billion last year for the first time. So we are not a small organization. We are not a fly-by-night organization. We are a bankable solution for solar projects, right? The other aspect that's really important, we're going to be talking about a lot, is it's not your average inverter, right? So it's a whole new technology. And we actually refer to other inverters as legacy inverters. And when we talk about inverters, we're just talking about taking that energy that's coming from that solar panel and making it available to the grid or to your facility or what have you. That's all really an inverter does, but it can do a lot more. And that's what Solaredge kind of shows. From a global standpoint, I say this because, and just so you know, I normally am talking to the people that you would call to get bids on building and designing solar PV systems, right? Those are my customers. So I really love the opportunity where I can talk to people that are actually the beneficiary of that energy, right? Because talking to you guys and helping you understand how a solar system can work is very important. So right now we have around 45,000 plus installers worldwide that utilize Solaredge. So we're a big player throughout the world. We have physical presence in 34 countries, and we have systems in 133. So we are a worldwide known brand. Okay, so let's talk about the solution itself. There are 4 primary tenets of the benefits of SolarEdge, but I'm going to focus on the 2 because, again, you guys are the end users. The 2 that are really most important to you are more energy and enhanced safety, right? And when I say more energy, I literally mean the system will produce more energy with a SolarEdge solution versus a standard string inverter. And we'll kind of go into a little bit about why in a moment. The other aspect is enhanced safety. We are literally the safest solution on the market. And a lot of policy around rooftop solar safety is built around our product, right? Now, I really want to emphasize, though, it does not mean that solar systems are in any way inherently dangerous. But you're only as good as who installed it, how strong the connections are. When I say we are the safest solution, I mean we mitigate all the potential failures that can happen over the life of a solar system that can turn from a simple, what we call thermal event to a full-blown fire. So if you hear about these issues like, major box stores that had a fire in their roof, it's not because solar is necessarily unsafe. It's because maybe a bad installation, what have you, right? So we can kind of show you how the SolarEdge solution avoids all those pitfalls, I'll put it that way. So this is what the system looks like, right? Normally what you have when you have a solar system is you have PV modules on the roof. They come down to inverters, which then pass that energy on to the grid or to the facility, right? They literally just convert DC energy to AC. And they also do what's called maximum power point tracking, meaning, and again, I'll use analogies again, a string of solar panels are a lot like a chain, right? They're only as strong as their weakest link. Same with a standard string inverter. What I mean by that is all of these modules are on individual strings connected to each other. If one module fails, all the other modules on that string track to that performance. So if you have, let's say, a box of panels that are supposed to produce 400 watts, and you have a few that are only producing at 395, all the other modules on those strings will also be at 395, right? It's a term in the industry called mismatch. And that's what we talk about when we talk about increased production. SolarEdge isn't doing anything magical. We're not making modules produce more. We're just eliminating the impact of lesser performing modules, right? So again, an analogy, when you're talking about a chain, that's the old analogy of a chain is only as strong as its weakest link. If you're trying to haul something behind your car and you have a chain of 20 links, right? They're all rated, all those links are rated for 1,000 pounds, tip 1. It's rated for 800 pounds. How much can you tow behind your car? 800 pounds. Now, what if you took that chain and now you had 10 individual chains of 2 links, right? All those, except for one, have 1,000 pound pulling power. One has 800. How does that impact? Doesn't at all. Now you can get that full 1,000 pound pulling power, right? So that weakest link chain analogy is actually perfect for SolarEdge, and that's what we use a lot, right? So we break up the performance or the functionality of the inverter in 2 parts. The inverter still does what we talked about before. It converts that electricity from DC to AC, but everything else is down here at the module level with our optimizers. So that means that maximum power point tracking, where we say the module can only perform as well as its lowest performing module. If this one breaks, it only affects the module next to it. The rest of the string, the rest of the array all perform at their greatest power potential, right? So now again, that mismatch, that little bit of discrepancy between modules goes away completely. And we'll talk about that impact. But now also from a safety standpoint, because we're all the way out here, both on the performance and monitoring level, we can also look at things like heat changes, temperature changes, variations in voltage, all these little things that can potentially lead to thermal events, right? We identify early on, and we're all monitoring it here for you or for your contractor at the monitoring platform, which comes free with SolarEdge, right? So you actually have view all the way down to the module level with your array. Big differentiator with SolarEdge. All right, so let's go a little bit deeper on what that means when we talk about safety. So and I'll go into a little bit more details about Safe DC. That's the trademark term that we call. Is everybody familiar with rapid shutdown? Well, you will be if you ever do a solar system. So in most of the country today, if you're going to put a PV system on a rooftop, it has to be able to shut down within a few moments, within a few feet of that array for any number of different reasons. Mainly because you want rapid response You want, service repairmen, so forth, that are going up there to be safe. Because what you don't understand, every module is still producing at all times, right? So going back here for a quick second, if for some reason I lose power to this, all these modules are still, they're a bunch of little batteries. They're all producing, right? So that wire coming down from that building to the inverter as well is still live. So if you have first responders for an emergency, for a fire, that might not even be related to the solar, right? They just have to go on the roof because there's a fire in the building. They have to deal with high voltage wires now, right? So that's what rapid shutdown does. That's built into our DNA from day one. The other areas are arc fault protection and level monitoring, which we talked about, and built-in monitoring temperature controls, right? So we can see what you're gonna hear about a lot. Arc fault is a big one, right? That little bit of loose wiring between two different modules causes a little arc. Same thing at home, right? If you take two wires and put them close together, they're gonna create an arc, right? That happens. That's one of those things that, regardless of how well all the equipment is, one little mishap installing it, you can create those arc flashes. So little things like that, all the ways that these thermal events can happen, SolarEdge mitigates and gives you access and visibility to from the portal. As far as safety C, that's what I was talking about, the term. This is where, again, that NEC code comes from for rapid shutdown. Basically, this means is anytime, for a number of reasons, let's say we lose connectivity between the module and the inverter, or the grid goes down, there's a blackout in the area, or any number of things happen that there's communication lost. All these modules go down to 1 volt. The optimizer reverts it down to 1 volt. So now this guy is completely safe as he walks around to find out what happened, what's going on, what do I need to fix? Or worse yet, there's a fire in a part of the building and first responders have to come on the roof. They don't have to worry about about electrical shock. As far as our latest iteration of our product, so this is our new platform. It's a 120K called the Synergy Inverter. It goes even further, right? So now we have stronger surge protection on all the inputs. We have stronger temperature sensors, and eventually, although you can't really see it in this picture, we're going to have temperature sensors at the optimizer level. So the connectors between the optimizers and the modules, you'll be able to see what's happening there and get an idea if there's any safety risks, fire risks, thermal event risks. Okay, so let's talk about that production difference now. That analogy of the chain and so forth, and being able to produce more and eliminating that mismatch. So what does that mean financially speaking and overall production facility? So what we like to do for our customers is do a side-by-side analysis, right? And this is one of those cases. We looked at a car dealership in Southern California. They were doing a 526 kW system that are all carports, right? So they're covering their new cars with carports. Using PV Syst, so that's kind of the de facto financial institutions use for determining the production value of a solar system. We use PV Syst to kind of analyze what would look like with SolarEdge versus a standard string inverter. Year 1, we increased their production by 3%. By year 20, we increased it by 6.6%. And that's, again, that mismatch issue, right? Because each module is going to perform a little bit differently. And then as they degrade over time, it impacts even more and more. There was actually some shading issues as well, which is another aspect of the system that having the optimizers eliminates. So overall, we produce around 4.7% more over the life of the system. What does that mean? What does that mean to customers? What does that mean to end users? So let's look at that. Let's look at the financial aspect of it. So if we know what year 1 looks like and we know what year 20 looks like, we can really easily extrapolate the intervening years, right? Here's the big number to look at. SolarEdge in this case, over the 20 years, will produce around 705,000 kilowatt hours more. Look at that compared to the final year of the string inverter, 709,000. Basically, a SolarEdge system is producing an additional year worth of energy. That is significant. In this case, in California, so they're around a 12% rate in SDG&E territory. So that means net present value, day 1, as soon as the system's installed, it's worth around $74,000 more than with a standard string inverter. That's impactful. That's what financiers care about. That's what your PPA providers care about. So if you're with a city, you're with a company that you're not going to own the asset yourself, you're going to rent it and then buy that power at a cheaper rate, that's where that makes a difference.
And it's appropriate when you look at this, when we go back to Greg's comments about he has to sell his streets of LA projects to city officials. When you're trying to sell a project to your AMA clients, this is your sales report. This is what does it.
Yep. So the last thing I want to talk about real quick is peace of mind, right? So when you look at customers ask, I have all these optimizers now. I have this 572K system, and let's say that's 1,000 optimizers out there that can fail, or I can have other issues, or how bankable is your product really? So SolarEdge is a program called the Advantage program now, and this is for any commercial solution, any system over 100 kW. And basically what this means is for the first 2 years, as we monitor the system's performance, if an optimizer fails or multiple optimizers fail, instead of worrying about calling your contractor and having them run out there to fix it and replace it, we're going to cover it for you. So we're going to watch it for every 6 months. And at the end of the 6 months, we will subsidize a cost for your contractor to go out and do a truck roll, which we'll probably do on a maintenance run anyway, every 6 months or so for the first couple of years. And for that production loss in between, whenever it happens in that 6-month period, we cover it. So if you tell us that it's 12 cents a kilowatt hour in your territory, and we had an optimizer fail that shaved 100 kW off your production for that 6 months, we cover it, right? So that we provide that peace of mind from a financier standpoint, the people that you're buying the power from, if you're using a PPA provider, for instance, to give them the comfort level to know that SolarEdge is the right solution. Does that make sense? Basically, we're putting our money where our mouth is, right? We know it's good. We want to make sure that it's good to the point where we're going to pay for it if it's not.
Great.